They're going to recreate the gig, and they're having Oasis in to Oasis. Oasis. Can you believe it's been 30 years since Oasis first toured? Now, I wouldn't remember Oasis because I'd have been too young. I was alive, but not old enough to have seen Oasis's tour. Oasis is quite hard to say, really. But Oasis, 30 years since their tour. And the BBC have done an article on that. You can have a look at BBC News. They've done an article titled Oasis's first tour 30 years on. Then it goes on to say venues say it's harder to host new bands. Now, I did a video about this last week with Moles having closed down. I was a bit late to the party with that one, but Moles closed down, which was a grassroots venue in Bath, very important venue in Bath, that's now gone. A venue that supported me, supported my friends, supported some of the most famous bands in the world. We talked in that video about Pulp, The Smiths, The Cure, Radiohead, all those famous bands that played. And now up-and-coming bands, young bands, they don't have those opportunities anymore because Moles is closed down. Well, the BBC News article goes on to talk about, funnily enough, Bristol, where I'm from. So they discuss about how Oasis, they weren't really keen on them, the guy booking the tour initially. They thought that they weren't that great. And the other band that were on the tour, because they did a dual header tour. There's a band called Whiteout that was on the tour with them as a double header, and Whiteout was tipped to be the better band. But they booked them, and then apparently, what does it say, a year or so later, they went from playing Tunbridge Wells to headlining Glastonbury the year after. What a meteoric rise. They got some great tunes, Oasis. I'm actually not that fussed with them. I saw them in 2012 on their Dig Out Your Soul tour. That was the same year that Damon Albarn from Blur, if you remember back in the 90s, Blur and Oasis were at loggerheads with each other. Well, the year Dig Out Your Soul came out by Oasis, which wasn't a very good album. I'm sorry, Noel and Liam. It wasn't that good. Damon Albarn had written an opera in Mandarin called Journey to the West, which I went to see, which was fantastic. Yeah, so they go on in this article to discuss the venues are struggling. And they say it's been getting worse every year. And the final nail in this coffin was the extraordinary increase in energy bills, services, supplies, and rent particularly. It is hard out there. The rent is on these places is going up. Buying products to sell behind the bar, that's getting more expensive. But I think it's more than that. I think these things happen. That's why the price of beer goes up. That's why the price to get in on the door goes up. I think the problem is the general public, i.e. you and I, they're just not going to these gigs. And it's really disappointing. Really, really disappointing to see the effects that not supporting your local music venues is doing. They're closing down, and they're closing down very quickly. The guy who owns The Fleece now, so 30 years ago, The Fleece, they hosted Oasis. And this year, they are going to do they're having their tribute band, Oasis. That I've never seen them. I have seen the pictures for the band before, the posters for their gigs. So I imagine they're very, very good. They've been going a long time. On the 30th of March, that's a Saturday, in Bristol in the Fleece, they are going to recreate the gig, and they're having Oasis in to Oasis. Oasis. To recreate that original gig. Apparently, they always sell out. So the Chris Sharp, I think I've met Chris Sharp. He's a nice dude. He owns The Fleece. Took over in 2010, and in this interview, he says they always sell out. Always. The bar money is great. You're taking £5,000 or £6,000 on the bar. That's our buffer. That's what keeps us afloat. When Sharp bought the long-running venue in 2010, he initially didn't want to book any tribute bands, but he soon realised that they sell more tickets than new groups and fans buy more beer. going to see bands that you don't know is vitally important. Go see the tribute acts, go support the venues, that's wonderful. But these up and coming bands need your support as well. There was a period in 2009 to 2010, before I went to university to study music and then got ridiculously busy, where I went and saw 5 or 6 bands a week. Big bands, small bands, local venues. I supported my friends' bands, went to see. I bought merch off these guys because, I was 19, I was earning a reasonably good wage, so I had disposable income. Buying their t-shirts, buying their CDs. Smaller bands' merch is cheaper than bigger bands' merch. So if you want a new t-shirt, go and see these local bands and buy a t-shirt from them. They're probably cheaper than buying them in the local high street as well. But Chris goes on to say, they've managed to work out a formula that keeps the business of the bar alive. That's great. So they have new bands and tours on during the week, and then the weekend they host tribute acts. This weekend just gone, they had the AC/DC tribute band, Hell's Bells, which are fantastic. And he goes on to say that he's concerned by the decline of bands passing through. We had 3 tours in February. We had 11 the year before. That is a significant drop. The last week of March were full, but it's taken to the end of March for it to pick up. I talked last time we spoke about this subject about Party in the City in Bath and every single venue being full up because it was free. And if everybody had contributed a small amount of money and went out regularly to these nights, these venues wouldn't have such a hard time. There are some great bands out there to discover. And the wonderful thing is about grassroots venues and young bands, and as young as in like not very long established bands, you can get on board with the conversation. That you can watch these bands grow, you can support them, you can support their music. It is important to go see the big bands and the big venues as well, but I think it's vitally important, even once a month. If you went once a month to a venue to watch bands that you had never seen before, you might discover something new. You might discover a favourite new band. But more importantly, you would be supporting local venues that give new musicians and new bands a platform to play on. Because without that platform, there really isn't new rock music or anything, or pop music, whatever the pop music is. When you go out or you turn on the radio and you listen to Radio 1, or you listen to the local radio and you got the songs that you know, all of those bands, all of those artists would have cut their teeth on the circuit, on the grassroots venues, on all the small venues around the UK and elsewhere in Europe as well, in America. That they would have cut their teeth on those. They would have refined their songs in those venues, getting face-to-face feedback from the audience. It's so valuable to play a song to a crowd that you might think is terrible and have positive feedback. I cannot tell you the amount of times I've done that with Horn and Glory and some of the other bands I play. We put a new song in the lineup deliberately somewhere in the middle when everyone's pumped, play it out, see what the reaction is. That's how you write music. Without that feedback from people, you don't know what's going to work. And so there won't be bops on the radio. And if there are bops on the radio, it will be more automated rubbish. But in order for these successful bands or artists to write music that they know works and they know that catches the ear, they need to hone their skills, I hate this word, but their craft. They need to go out, they need to play these venues, they need to see local people. I urge you to, if you're not busy this week or this weekend, if you've got a free evening, Google local venues near me. In Bristol, there are loads of local venues that put on live music. Every night of the week. In Bath, every night of the week. Bristol, every night of the week you can go out and see a different genre. If you like jazz, there's jazz. If you like pop, there's pop. If you like rock, there's rock. If you like even going to see DJs and like they're there. And people are working really hard to put this on for you. Please, if you do anything this week, look up some local venues and at the very least, check out the bands, check out their Spotify list, check out their Instagram, give them a like, give them a share, because it helps these bands hone their craft so that eventually you can be listening to them on your commute on local radio or on national radio, because without the grassroots events, they don't happen. Now, I'm very fortunate that I get to put on gigs with the children that I teach through the Rock Project in Bath, in Trowbridge, in Chippenham, in Swindon and Keynsham. We get to put on gigs. Trowbridge, the Rock Project Trowbridge, they're going to be playing at Trowfest. The Wurzels, probably one of the greatest bands that ever exist. They're headlining Trowfest, and the Rock Project are getting to play. So if you want to play in a band, if you have young people in your life that want to play in a band, look up the Rock Project. Bath, Keynsham, Chippenham, Swindon, Trowbridge. We have sessions where you can come, learn an instrument, guitar, bass, drums, vocals, and join like-minded people, have lessons on your instrument, learn to play as a band, and you get to put on regular gigs. If you want to get in touch, you can email at wiltshire@therockproject.com, or you can look us up at www.therockproject.com. I'll be logging off for now. See you in the next video.